What's going on YouTube? Bacon here bringing you another video. This one going to be my week 9 match for the VPL. This week we're taking on Ben in the Orlando Oricorios, who are in the Heatmore division. It's an inter-division week. And he's sitting at 4-4 right now, right on the cusp of a playoff spot. It's really tight over in that division as far as who's going to make it in the last 1 or 2 spots. But over on my side, a win here would clinch a playoff spot for me, since I have the head-to-head versus Pace, and I think he already actually has 4 losses as well at this point in the season. So a win here and we're in, but it's going to be a tough match. I really don't, similar to my matchup versus Antonio in the previous week where he had a rain team, Ben's got a sand team, and kind of that same principle applies where the Swift Swim sweepers were a huge problem for me. Excadrill is a huge problem for my team as a whole. Obviously under sand it's going to outspeed everything and hit everything really hard. If he's running Life Orb or Bandit or SD or Z moves, anything like that, like pretty much any sand rush, Excadrill is going to put in the work on my team. Even just as a whole, not necessarily just looking at what I built specifically. Flygon's also a bit of an issue, as well as Victini. If he's running like a mixed Victini or a special Victini, that could be hugely problematic for me. So I'm hoping it's more of a physical set this match. But yeah, let me just get, actually, since I'm talking about all his Pokemon here, let me get through what his team has. On Ben's team, he's got Victini, Amoonguss, Mantine, Gigalith, Alolan Raichu, Turtonator, Mega Glalie, Excadrill, Sylveon, Flygon, and Zangoose. Zangoose is his Omni Z user, probably just for like Z Belly Drum, is kind of the thing that came to mind. So I already mentioned kind of some of the threats on his team and some of what I was prepping for and kind of scared of in my prep. So on my end, I nixed Tapu Koko this week just because it really doesn't do anything to Excadrill in the first place, and I was anticipating something like a potential Scarf Flygon. So I really didn't think Tapu Koko had a very good matchup, so that's why I didn't end up bringing it as far as my my good Pokemon, quote-unquote, are concerned. But just looking at what I brought, I've got Winnie the Miltank here, coming with Rocky Helmet, Max Fizz Def, Thick Fat, Stealth Rock, Milk Drink, Toxic, and Seismic Toss. My hope is he's running kind of a physically oriented Victini, which really can't touch this set. V-Create's obviously going to be resisted because of my Thick Fat ability, and even if he's running something like Brick Break, it wouldn't do too much to me, and I can chip that thing down with Rocky Helmet over the course of the match, especially if it keeps going for U-turn or anything like that. Seismic Toss just puts in good damage on his team. Stealth Rock gets some chip that I need for like things like my Greninja in the back. And Toxic's just nice to wear down his wall, specifically the Mantine, which is a little bit of a problem, mostly for my Greninja. So if I can get a Toxic off on that thing, that'd be really nice for me. I really don't mind trading Toxics with that thing, because Miltank's really just here to get up Stealth Rocks, chip down the Victini a little bit, and spread some status around his team, spread some chip around, so that some of my faster Mons can sweep in the late game. So really like the Miltank matchup here on paper. It does decently against Flygon as well, even if it's a DD variant or anything like that. And Scarf Flygon really can't do much to Miltank either. So yeah. Next up, we got Frobchamp the Greninja, coming to its 9th game in a row, so it's come to all 9 games this season. It's just really easy to splash Greninja onto teams because it's got such great coverage options and it's got a great speed tier, and you have the luxury of being able to run appropriate damage boosting items versus your opponent. So in this case, I've got Expert Belt, Water Shuriken, Scald, Ice Beam, and U-Turn. Obviously, I can't touch Mantine. I did have HP Electric on this Mon at one point. But I know Ben sometimes runs like a bulkier Victini, like an AV Victini or something like that. So I wanted to have the U-turn option there because the switch into Mantine in the first place is pretty obvious. But U-turn also would be able to chip down the Victini to put it in range of a Scald later in the game. Water Shuriken's there specifically for the Excadrill. If that thing's in sand, obviously it's going to outspeed me, but the Water Shuriken priority would be really nice to pick it off. 5 hits will OHKO the Excadrill from full, and if I can get a little bit of chip damage off, 4 will do something like 80%, and then so forth down the line. So obviously it's weighted more towards, the way Water Shuriken works is it's weighted more towards 2 or 3 hits, but there's still a 33% chance that you'll get 4 or 5. The combo of 4 or 5. So I think it's like 1 out of 6 you get 3, or sorry, 1 out of 6 you get 4, 1 out of 6 you get 5, and then it's 1 out of 3 each for 2 and 3 hits. But Water Shuriken's just really nice to pick that thing off in the back. Scald hits a lot of his stuff pretty hard, bar the Mantine. Ice Beam's there specifically for Flygon because Scald isn't gonna OHKO that thing. And like I mentioned, U-turn is mostly there for initiative on a Mantine switch in, or for getting a little bit of chip off if he stays in with bulky ass Victini or something like that. Next up, we got Mega Abomasnow Wampa coming back. Once again, needed the hail this week to reset sand, potentially. I'm running a lot of speed on this thing to make sure I outrun that Gigalith. This is Adamant Max Attack Abomasnow with a lot of speed investment, close to max speed as far as an Adamant nature is concerned. Swords Dance, Ice Shard, Wood Hammer, and Earthquake. If I can chip down the Victini, Swords Dance Mega Abomasnow can actually kind of go in versus team. If I can predict a switch out from something like a Flygon, not wanting to take an Ice Shard, or I can potentially just whack things with my dual stab. Ice Shard and Wood Hammer just hit really hard on his team. He really doesn't have great Wood Hammer switch-ins. Even the Victini is going to not appreciate all that damage if it comes in on one. And Earthquake's there specifically to hit the Victini. And it can also chip down things like the Gigalith and the Excadrill without me having to go for Wood Hammer, which would obviously hit me with a bunch of recoil. And Ice Shard is just nice to... It actually does about 25 to 30% to Excadrill as well, so if it's low on HP, I can potentially pick that thing off with an Ice Shard, or potentially put it in range of Micro Ninja's Water Shuriken in the back. Next up, we got Klefki coming back. This one's Safety Goggles Klefki with Magnet Rise, Defog, Foul Play, and Spikes. Magnet Rise because he's got quite a few things that I think might end up going for an Earthquake versus me. Something like a potential Scarf Flygon locked into Earthquake. If I Magnet Rise on that thing, I get free Spikes up. So that's really nice for me. I can Defog on most of his team, and Foul Play is just there for something like a DD variant of Flygon or a SD variant of Excadrill. I can Foul Play those things and do a ton of damage back. I really didn't feel like I needed Play Rough. I felt like Foul Play hit his team better. It also hits Victini. Not that I'd necessarily want to be staying in on that thing anyways. Safety Goggles are there just to protect me from Spore from Amoonguss, which, as you can see, unfortunately didn't end up coming. But this was going to be kind of a primary Amoonguss switch in. Come in on a Spore and drop a bunch of Spikes on his team. Most of his team is grounded and really doesn't appreciate the Spikes, and that'll bait in something like the Mantine, which is very passive versus my team, and I can get in potentially something like Kieran Black, predicting him to go for a Defog, which would be really nice for me. And Defog on my end is just to keep my Pokemon healthy in the back here. I've got obviously Kieran Black and Mega Abomasnow really don't appreciate the existence of Stealth Rocks, so Defog with Klefki might be important at some point in the match. But if I've got a few layers of Spike up, it's better for me in the long run to keep, like, if I got Spikes and Stealth Rocks up and he's just got Stealth Rocks, I can live with that and not Defog, because wearing down his team with those Spikes is going to be really important for things like Micro Ninja. Next up here we got Kieran Black, ICMZ, Kieran Black, Dragon Claw, Fusion Bolt, Freeze Shock, and Ice Beam. So once again, running the ICMZ on Kieran Black. He really doesn't have anything on his team that appreciates it. I think his Ice Resist is the Glalie, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just check that really quick. Yeah, so his only Ice Resist is Glalie, which is not... I'm pretty sure it's actually O-code by a Z Freeze Shock, because that thing's bulk is not particularly impressive. Or if not O-code, maybe O-code after Rocks. I haven't actually run that calc. It's really good for breaking through things like Sylveon, which you can see it didn't end up bringing. But I can also nuke things. Like, if I can get this in on a free switch, say like a U-turn on a Mantine coming in, I can just start throwing off really powerful attacks. I can go for Fusion Bolt, I can go for Z Freeze Shock, and blow that thing away. I can also get this thing in on a Amoonguss, potentially, on a U-turn. And just nuke something. Even Victini, I guess Victini is his real Ice Resist. Even Victini doesn't really want to take it, especially if like Stealth Rocks and Spikes are up. This is still doing about half to Victini, standard Victini set. So the Z Freeze Shock is just a really nice nuke. Fusion Bolt to hit specifically the Mantine. Ice Beam for things like the Flygon and Amoonguss if I've blown my Z move already. And it can also hit things like Excadrill outside of Sand pretty decently hard with Ice Beam because its special defense stat isn't so great. But yeah, this is the Kieran Black set. And lastly here we got Kingpin, the Nidoking. We got Shukaberry Nidoking with Sheer Force, Sucker Punch, Earthquake, Ice Punch, and Poison Jab. So Adamant, max attack, max HP. No speed on this thing because I really didn't feel like I needed to speed creep anything. At full, I should be able to live an unboosted hit from Victini, assuming it's Jolly Nature to outspeed my Kieran Black. I can also potentially Sucker Punch that thing if it's banded or if it's late in the game and it's chipped down a little bit. Sucker Punch should do about 40% to a no bulk Victini. Earthquake's really nice to hit specifically the Gigalith, which would otherwise be able to take an Earth Power. I think it can still take an Earthquake, actually, but it's doing a lot of damage, and with my Shuka Berry, it won't be able to do too much back to me. This is also a potential way for me to kind of trap and bait the Excadrill to go for Earthquake versus me, live through my Shuka Berry, and KO that thing with Earthquake. Same thing for Flygon. I've got Ice Punch. Same idea, basically. He goes for Earthquake with his Flygon. I Ice Punch that thing. I don't have to worry about it for the rest of the match. This should be really nice. And then Poison Jab's there specifically to pressure his Sylveon, which once again didn't end up coming, but I could pretty freely bring this thing on a Sylveon unless he predicts that and goes for like a Psyshock or something, and just fire off a strong Poison Jab. He doesn't really have great switch-ins for Nidoking, not that most people do. So I thought on paper it looked pretty good, this matchup. Alright, all that being said, you can see what Ben brought on the other side of the screen there. He's got Gigalith, Mantine, Zangoose, Excadrill, Victini, and Flygon. So this is about what I expected to see, bar the Zangoose. I thought something like Sylveon or a Moongus was more likely, but the Zangoose came, and that's actually a little bit of a threat for my team. If he's like a Belly Drum set or an SD Toxic Boost set, really either would be pretty scary for me, actually, because my normal resist is a Klefki, which, even though I can foul play him, I'm slower, so he could just hit me with like a Facade or an Earthquake or whatever. I think Zangoose does get Earthquake. So that thing is actually a little bit of a problem for my team, especially because a lot of my Pokemon are kind of slow this matchup. Nidoking, Klefki, Abomasnow, Miltank, they're all slower than Zangoose, so it would really come down to like Greninja and Karen Black to make sure that thing doesn't get to set up for free. I'm kind of thinking, just looking at the team, typical Sandrush, Excadrill, either Z-Move or Life Orb or something like that. Mantine, I'm expecting to be Spadef to handle my Greninja, probably Defog, Toxic, Scald, Roost, something like that. Victini could go a couple different ways. I was thinking something like a Mixtini, maybe Assault Vest type set, or potential Choice Scarf Victini. And then the Flygon could be either Choice Scarf or Dragon Dance. Both, I think, have a pretty good matchup versus me to boost past my Tapu Koko, my Greninja speed tiers, and knock them out with Earthquake. So looking at lead matchup here, there's really not a whole lot of reason for me to not lead with Nidoking. It does have a pretty good matchup against most things on his team. I'm just going to go for Sucker Punch on turn 1, anticipating it to be Choice Scarf, but it's actually Adamant Victini, so that was a 50-50 roll to knock me out with the V-Create there, and unfortunately Ben does pick it up. But I do get some important chip damage off on the Victini so that I can knock it out with Scald later in the game. As you saw there, it was whiter Victini, so I know I'm faster than this thing with my Greninja. So unfortunately I had to waste off my Nidoking turn 1, but it's a little unfortunate for me, but at least I got the chip damage off on Victini I needed to always pressure it with Greninja. Free U-turn here, anticipating him to go Mantine. I don't think you sack Victini this early in the game, and now I just get to claim one with Karen Black. He's got no switch-ins for a Z-Free Shock here. I'm pretty sure Victini goes down, or at least is close to going down to a Z-Free Shock here, and he can't risk Fusion Bolt as well. So I'm just going to Z-Free Shock this Mantine, and it goes bye-bye. I guess I suppose I could have just straight Fusion Bolted there, but I didn't want him to read that and get in Flygon or anything crazy like that. So I felt like that was the best play. Now Zangoose comes in, and if this is like a Z Belly Drum set, it's actually very problematic. So I actually clicked Ice Beam here, hoping for the freeze, and he just goes for Scarf Final Gambit. So the Zangoose is gone, but basically my Karen Black is as well. I don't know how I feel about that trade. Like, if he had Z Belly Drummed, it would have been really, really bad for me. So I guess it could have been worse. But I'm just going to stay in here and sack off my Karen Black as he goes for Earthquake with his Flygon. I'm reading this as a potential Choice Scarf Flygon, but I don't know for sure yet. But I really have no reason to go anything other than my my Greninja here. I can Ice Beam this thing for free. Even if he goes into Gigalith or something like that, it's not going to appreciate taking this chip damage, which is good for me in the late game, because with the sand up, it actually can take some hits from my Greninja, and I want to weaken that thing as much as possible going forward. So here I've got no reason to stay in. Scald does not knock him out from this range, and I really can't risk him just going for Earthquake or Stone Edge or whatever. So I'm just going to U-turn out. And I believe I go into my Klefki this turn, anticipating him to click Stealth Rocks, which I could potentially defog and waste off some of his sand turns. But it turns out he actually is carrying the Superpower on Gigalith, which is good prep. As you can see, a lot of my team gets hit pretty hard by Superpower. But now he's probably not going to want to stay in. I'm thinking he might want to take advantage of some of his sand turns with like Excadrill or his Flygon. So here's a pretty good opportunity for me to get up a Spike. He does go out into the Excadrill, figuring I can't really touch him, which, I mean, I do have Foul Play, but that really wasn't a great option for me there, since I still wouldn't have done too much to the Gigalith in the first place. I'm just going to click foul play here, anticipating him to potentially SD. If he SDs in my face, I'm pretty screwed because I have to sack off my Abomasnow just to get rid of the sand. So I really didn't want him to do that. He just goes for Iron Head. Turns out that's choice banned Excadrill, otherwise he would not have been able to knock me out from that range. So knowing that he's choice banded into Iron Head, I've got a couple options. I could go out into my Miltank, but I opt to go out back into my Greninja, and I can just freely click Scald here. There's no reason not to. In this case, actually, did I even click Scald here? Oh no, I doubled out. Yeah, I doubled out into my Abomasnow. So the only options he really had there were to go back out into his Gigalith or to go out into Flygon on a potential Scald. And now I can get rid of the Sandstorm by Mega Evolving my Abomasnow. I make a huge misplay here. I go for Earthquake. It was really, like, I have no justification for going for Earthquake, other than I thought he was going to switch out, predicting Ice Shard. He just whacks me with a Fire Punch. I live, but now I don't live a turn of sand damage, and I've just wasted a turn clicking Earthquake. And now I'm in an even worse position because I can't Ice Shard this turn either, because if he goes hard Gigalith, my Abomasnow's dead, and I have no way to reset the Hail, and I haven't gotten any chip off on the Excadrill yet. So I have to go out into Miltank here, hoping he's scarfed into Fire Punch. As you can see, Thick Fat Miltank is going to absolutely chew that Fire Punch. Unfortunately, I get burned. Not such a huge deal because of I do have Seismic Toss as opposed to Body Slam, but that is going to help ship me down a little bit more with the Hail than I would otherwise be at. I'm just going to get up Stealth Rocks here. Every bit of chip on that Excadrill is good to improve my roll. Basically, the end game here is now I'm going to need to get 4 hits of Water Shuriken with my Greninja on the Excadrill, or potentially Ice Shard it with my my Abomasnow, but because it's so low, I really don't anticipate that happening. It turns out he's DD Flygon, which means I'm going to have to sack another Pokemon to this thing. I choose for it to be the Miltank. I'm just going to go for Seismic Toss this turn, as I do actually live the Devastating Drake, which is crazy. As you can see, that burn's not really going to come into play because the Flygon wouldn't have taken extra chip of Hail damage or anything like that, since Hail is going to end next turn. And he could just have freely clicked Earthquake and not taken any Rocky Helmet damage from me. So the Flygon would be sitting at, about 27% either way, which is out of range of 2 hits of Greninja and potentially 3. So I have to go Abomasnow here, revenge kill this thing with Ice Shard. If I just clicked it in the first place, I would have a full health Mega Abomasnow and a full health Miltank still in the back. But now I've got none of that, unfortunately. And he can pretty freely go out into Gigalith and get his sand up, which will knock out my Abomasnow. And since he's already shown Superpower, he's got no reason not to click it. So I can't go hard Greninja predicting like an Earthquake or him missing Stone Edge or anything like that. He's got no reason to click anything other than Superpower. So I just have to knock out the Gigalith and let my Abomasnow go down. So now it's all up to Greninja. If Greninja gets 4 hits on this Excadrill, it should drop to Water Shuriken. So there's a 33% chance of that happening. Obviously not in my favor, but given that I basically choked away the game by not Ice Sharding the Flygon, a 33% chance to win is really not so bad here. Obviously I'll knock out Victini with Scald afterwards. So I'm just going to click Water Shuriken and hope for the best with Greninja here. The Excadrill comes on out. I get 1, 2, and it's just 2 hits of Water Shuriken. So like I mentioned, it wasn't in my favor to get enough hits there anyways, but I was really hoping Greninja could come through once again and clean up in the back. But I do lose 2-0 to Ben. Really good game to Ben. I thought he played very well. I think really the big misplay, of course, was me not clicking Ice Shard against the Flygon. I realistically had no reason not to. Like, I get a little bit of chip off on the Gigalith. I get a little bit of chip off on Excadrill. I get chip off on the Victini and then go out into Miltank the following turn. Like, there was no reason for me to not click Ice Shard there, because Victini would come in on Spike, take Hail damage, and take the Ice Shard damage. While it wouldn't be in range of another Ice Shard, Rocky Helmet on Miltank would basically ensure that thing was dead. And then I still have full health Abomasnow and full health Miltank in the back. The Zen game looks a lot different because, like I mentioned, that is banded Excadrill. Miltank can live a hit. Seismic Toss that thing maybe once or twice to put it in range of Greninja. I would have Abomasnow around. I could click Ice Shard and chip down the Excadrill a little bit before I went for Water Shuriken, and Greninja probably should have been able to clean. But I really messed up the end game here by not clicking Ice Shard against that Flygon. I basically ended up sacking both my Abomasnow and my Miltank to that Flygon for no reason. And like I said, I really have no justification for making that play other than, like, all 3 of the things I thought he would go out to were weak to Earthquake, so why not click it? I really didn't think he was going to stay in for whatever reason, but in the long run, I really miscalculated the risk reward there, and it ended up costing me. That's the game, you know. You live, you learn. Next time, I'll make the smart play. I think I hope. It was just not a good play on my end. One of the worst plays I think I've made this season. But I can't dwell on it. I got to keep moving. Got to win next week to take over that last playoff spot, or a playoff spot going forward. Because if I lose next week, I'm potentially vulnerable to losing my playoff spot. I definitely don't want that to happen. So I think I'm going to come a little bit better prepared next week. And then hopefully push our way into playoffs. A good game against Ben. He's actually was in the thick of the playoff race here as well. I'll just spoil it for you guys. He did end up getting beat by Jeff in the final week of the season, so he did come up just short. But for his first season in the league, I thought Ben did really well. I think he finished 5-5, just on the cusp of playoffs. But he picked up some big wins this year. He beat me, he beat Finn, and we were the two finalists from last season. So GG to Ben, great season. Thank you very much for playing. I hope you return for the next season. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.